Welcome to the RDL show. Ryan D. Leaf show here, back in the big seat. Appreciate Jonathan and the crew here, Sky and Charlie, holding down the fort last week while I was hosting Rich Eisen. We got a great show for you today. Amy Dash, CBS Sports Radio analyst, legal analyst, is going to join us to kind of give us more of a legal aspect of things that's surrounding this Deshaun Watson situation. I don't want to speculate. I want to get somebody with some real experience and know-how behind it to kind of educate us on what's transpiring and what's going on. A 19th case has been filed civilly against Deshaun Watson now. Nothing criminal. So we'll get into that with Amy Dash here in about 20 minutes or so, but I wanted to start the show with my experience last week. The opportunity to host the Rich Eisen show, of course, took me away from what we've started here, but the platform in itself allows for an amazing opportunity and one that I'm extremely grateful for. But it's amazing when I've done some things in the past. When I did the Ellen DeGeneres show, when I was a part of ESPN a couple of years ago, it's a different animal. You speak, you talk, you share a story. There's an impact that happens, and it's what we hope we're going to be able to do with this show and the reach we're able to have ultimately. We've grown exponentially over the first few weeks of the show. We're coming up at the end of the month of our inaugural first month here on the RDL show. And I kind of wanted to talk to everybody out there who's listening, who's a part of the show, about storytelling. And when I say storytelling, I don't mean fiction. I don't mean made up things. I don't mean that type of storytelling. I mean telling your story. Now, when I travel around the country and I speak, I always tell the audience that if I were sitting in that audience and one of you were up here telling me your story, it doesn't have to be revolving around mental health. It doesn't have to be revolving around substance abuse. It doesn't have to be revolving around anything other than simply your story, your human experience. The thing about that is, if you're still here, if you are somebody who's made it through anything, any adversity, any life has all of that. If you were to go up there and tell me your story, it would be just as impactful to me and the audience as my story is in front of an audience or in front of everybody who's listening today. That's important. And when I have people reach out and ask how they can be of service, because I talk about that being the foundation of what this is all about, who I've become is about being of service to others. Your story can do that. Because especially in 2020, everybody's gone through something. Everybody's had to deal with adversity and overcome and try to do the next right thing and be a positive influence. And there are those, such as myself and many others, who have struggled, who have fallen down and gotten back up and chose to take a little bit of control back with what they do. So the onus on that is simply storytelling, and anybody can do that. Now, of course, standing up in front of a room full of people, or on a stage or in front of a desk talking to thousands and thousands and thousands of people, it takes some practice. I wasn't good at it when I first stepped in front of the microphone. It takes time, and it started with me simply sharing in fellowship meetings in front of a couple other people and just being comfortable with who you are, because your story is human, just like everybody else's. And we're all the same. We're these flawed human beings who are trying to be better every single day. So if you're looking at ways to be of service, and there are people out there that can relate to you, what you're going through, just share your story with them. Be relatable. Two people having a conversation about maybe some struggles, maybe some adversity they've overcome, something like that can bring one another together to help be better humans walking this planet right now. I think that's the best thing you can do. So if you take anything away from today, it's storytelling. Simply telling your story. It's as impactful as you here listening to mine. It really, really is. I learn something every single day. I don't walk into a room thinking I'm the most experienced, the smartest. I probably was someone who did that for a long, long time, but you are humbled and you figure it out, and you know the best next option is to simply get back up, keep trudging forward, and try to be the best possible version of yourself, and therefore good things will happen. Doesn't mean it happens right away. It may take time, but as long as you are not invested in the result, and that's a hard thing to do in all of this, is not to be invested in the result, because we're a society of results. We want instant satisfaction. We want it now, and we want all those things in front of us. Understand, if you stay out of the result, just continue to do the work. I guarantee you, from somebody who has experienced the bottom to the top, back to the middle, and trudging forward, it can happen if you continue to do the next right thing. So appreciate you joining us here on a Monday. Joining us, of course, Jonathan Rifkin, I cannot say your name anymore. Guasco.
That's it. Nailed it.
Anymore? You were able to say it before?
I know. Was I ever? I just always Guasco.
Guasco.
Guacamole squo.
Exactly. Guasco. Perfect.
I introduced my son to guacamole this weekend. He loved it. Guasco. Charlie Moss, hanging out in Indiana, celebrating getting a new head coach to coach the basketball team there.
Good vibes.
Since right now the women's basketball team is representing Indiana basketball for everybody.
Yes, they are. Shout out Allie Patberg. She's a beast.
Welcome to the show. They took over last week, but what we're all talking about is the Sweet 16, right? And it's Pac-12 dominated. Jonathan, you and I cover the Pac-12, mostly the football side of things, but we stay very involved in the basketball side of it. If you and I would have had the conversation pre-tournament, what were the odds, and we both filled out brackets, that there would be 3 teams from the Pac-12 in the Elite Eight?
Well,
I had one.
It's the first
and I had the wrong one.
It's the first time that's happened since 2001. The odds of it happening were incredibly low.
And none of you were born then, right? So
barely. I was still a youngling. I didn't even know what Pac-12 basketball was. I knew what USC was, though, at that time when I was 4 years old. But considering that 2 of those 3 teams, Ryan, are double-digit seeds in the 11 seed UCLA and 12 Oregon State, that's what really stands out, right? If it was Colorado, USC, and Oregon in this situation, it wouldn't be as impressive because those were all single seeds. But to have the 12th seed that was picked to finish last in the Pac-12, was the lower seed in the NCAA or in the Pac-12 tournament, won the Pac-12. I mean, they've won 6 straight winner-go-home games. That's incredibly impressive for college basketball. So for Oregon State, 0% chance.
Everybody's winner-go-home games kind of. But I get your point.
No. But you could. Oregon lost in the tournament. USC lost in the Pac-12 tournament. UCLA lost. Those are winner-go-home games for them because
Oregon State simply was.
No matter what.
I would have thought.
No, but Oregon.
I would have thought that they would have gotten a higher seed being the Pac-12 champion, but the committee clearly showed that they didn't believe the conference was strong. 5 teams got in, yes. Should have been 4 if Oregon State doesn't win the tournament, but then the seedings, right? UCLA gets in as a first 4, and they've simply just. Other than the first half against Michigan State, they've been as dominant as any team in the tournament. USC looks like they are playing their best basketball of late at the right time.
And USC's best basketball of our lifetimes. Of your lifetime and mine, they've never had a defense this dominant before.
Well, they've never had 2 7-footers that can stretch the court like they can, and that's a huge factor. And it may be the only team that I've seen during the tournament that could actually give Gonzaga a run for their money if they're playing that big, that stretched out with that zone that they just suffocated Oregon with late last night. It was something to behold. But we kind of should have seen that coming. The way they destroyed Oregon on that Monday night late in the regular season. It was a weird kind of scheduled game, so I didn't take too much stock in it. But after watching the first half last night, it was very clear that USC was the better team, and they may give Gonzaga USC may be the best chance to beat Gonzaga in this tournament. I think that's going to be a great game on Tuesday night. Now, speaking of games tonight, Oregon State against Houston. Now, Houston and Kelvin Sampson, right? Fun story. Kelvin Sampson was the head coach at Washington State when I was getting recruited. So when I got recruited, it was implied with my football recruitment that I was going to get to play basketball, and Kelvin Sampson was the head coach at the time, and he put together a great Washington State team that got him to the tournament that year, and then he went off to Oklahoma to be the head coach. He's bounced around everywhere, but everywhere he goes, he puts together talented teams that ultimately have the ability to get to the Final Four, and here we are again. So Oregon State and Houston in the first matchup tonight, followed by Baylor and Arkansas. Ironically enough, after all these brackets have been filled out and all the hoopla of the underdogs that have won games here and there, we ultimately, if chalk flies over the next couple nights, could have 3 number 1 seeds and a number 2 seed in the Final Four. So, not incredibly shocking. Michigan versus Gonzaga, Baylor versus Houston. That's the way it would go. But for whatever reason, there's a sneaky suspicion that both UCLA and Oregon State are going to give Houston and Michigan a hell of a time. What kind of coup would it be if the Pac-12 had 3 of the 4 Final Four teams? I mean, has that ever happened? That's never happened.
No, it's never happened. Yeah. Never happened. It would be. Has there
ever been a Final Four where there's been 3 conference teams that have made it? That would be amazing.
I'm somewhere the Big East or the ACC has done it.
Yeah.
Not in the Pac-12.
No,
not in the Pac-12. But I mean, this is Larry Scott's. This is the last big sport. I mean, the College World Series, if it's not canceled. But for Larry Scott, this is the big last impression he gets to make before he's done, right? He's in Indianapolis. So, I mean, it's almost, when you say it's what kind of a coup, it's almost like Larry Scott giving you an FU to everybody else saying, I was undervalued as a commissioner. Look how good the Pac-12 is. Mm-hmm. And under my reign, they're kicking everybody's ass in basketball. Unfortunately, most collegiate sports fans are football fans. And last night I got a text from one of my friends that goes to USC. I'm sorry about your loss. I don't really care. I'd rather win a conference football championship than an NCAA basketball championship. Because in college sports, I don't know, football I think resonates more with the average college fan. So for the Pac-12, it's great, but I don't think they'll ever get the respect that the conference deserves until football is really back on the map.
Well, that won't even matter either. It's just this. We live on the West Coast. We're sports fans, but the interest in college sports, football, basketball, it's not the same. If UCLA and USC were to get to the Final Four and play against each other, it would be a big deal, but it would be a blip in LA. If the Lakers were playing, or if baseball kicks off and the Dodgers are opening up, it's just what it is. There's more going on. There's a reason why people don't show up to football games.
UCLA has real basketball fans. USC has fair-weathered fans. I've never met a diehard USC basketball fan before, but UCLA is rooted in history basketball-wise that I think you get sort of a generational.
Still, it's a blip. Yeah, it is in football too. It just means more to the people in the South. There's so much going on the West Coast, the beaches, everything. The forest. I mean, there's so much different interests in other things. It's not followed the same way. And guess what? That's okay. It's not a referendum on the fandom or the people. It's just a way of life out west. Doesn't mean the football's not great. The interest is just not the same. Therefore, you can't expect the same type of things that you get from the South or the Midwest. When the fall happens in the South, that's all it's about, right? It's about college football in the South. That's okay. It's okay. These things are all okay. I want to see a team develop and be good enough, and I just expansion is going to have to do that. It really is, to include the Pac-12 to get the respect they deserve every single year. It's just so damn competitive, and they play so well against one another. It's hard to find a team that ultimately can go undefeated or with one loss to get
Sorry, Ron. The basketball season proved exactly what you're saying. The reason that the Pac-12, I think, in the tournament, and I said this morning on my friend's show, is so surprising to everybody, but to people like you and me who follow the conference and have covered basketball over the course of this past season, is because most other conferences were forced to play mostly a conference-only schedule. The Pac-12 is forced to play a conference-only schedule. Well, guess what? The Power Five has one representative from the other conference. The Pac-12 is 3. Why? Because there was a level playing field, and the Pac-12 is like everybody looks at Oregon State as like, oh, they were lower seed in the Pac-12. They were a lower seed in a dominant basketball conference, right? They're battle tested. Wayne Tinkle has figured out a system with Ethan Thompson and Jared Lucas, right? Who that works as a 1-2 punch in a way that you don't see in the Big 12, the ACC, or the Big 10, right? So the way that this whole dynamic is being orchestrated with these Pac-12 teams gives them an edge because the playing field is finally level. That's why Gonzaga is consistently so battle-tested, right? They play these dominant out-of-conference schedules. But this year, the playing field is more even because of coronavirus, because of the conference-only schedule.
Well, I just think that the conference is competitive, and no one ever gets the respect of that because they don't ever truly do well outside their conference for whatever reason. In football and in basketball, they struggle, and it's weird because then they get into conference, and the conference is so darn competitive, they make it a really difficult deal, and it's a problem. So we'll see. We talk about the football aspect of things. There's some great non-conference games if non-conference games are played next year. Oregon's supposed to go to Ohio State in week 2. I believe Michigan plays Washington to open the season. There's some interesting non-conference games next year in the few years that they have to win. You and I have talked about this. The best non-conference win for the
Arizona
Pac-12
State over
football.
Michigan State.
That, and I would say Oregon over Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, probably the biggest one.
That's not a regular season game, though. That's a Rose Bowl victory.
True,
I would say regular season, you got to have victories to even get there, and Oregon hasn't had a marquee regular season win in 4 or 5 years.
They've played them, but they haven't. That's true. So we're going to get to Amy. We're going to get to Amy Dash here in a little bit. First, we're going to get to our pay a few bills here. Sunfair. I saw myself. They used an old picture from when I hosted before on Rich Eisen, and they used the one that they took on Friday morning, and I looked like a different person, and it's all because of the food. I need you to go to sunfair.com right now, sign up, enter your information, select Carl Farrow as your sales representative, and then go to the How Did You Hear About Us and click on the Ryan D. Leaf Show. You'll get your first order 10% off, fresh, personalized, healthy meals delivered to your door every single morning. It's awesome to walk down the steps, open the door, see that green bag sitting there with your day of food, not knowing what it's going to be. Today already, some filet mignon already today to eat. Got some chicken and mushrooms later on in the afternoon today. And then for dinner, a nice Kobayashi salmon. It's as you can see in the pictures, it has changed what I look like, how I feel, how I think. It really is. My mental health has improved greatly over the last 9 months simply because of what I'm putting in my body. So go to sunfair.com as soon as you can and order your first weeks of meals, 10% off your first order with the RDL show. Anywhere in LA and Phoenix, by the way, right now. They're locally located where we do the show and in the Phoenix area. So
Hopefully,
I know I've
coming
had
up
some.
north.
Yeah, I know I've had some buddies of mine calling out and say, "Hey, can we get it delivered to Connecticut?" I said, "Yeah, we can get it done. It's not going to be cost effective for you to do it, but if or to Indiana, not quite yet. We'll figure it out. We'll grow it. The RDL show will grow it to a point where it's pretty special." So I reached out to Amy.
Quick stat, Ryan, before you move on here. The most teams any conference has ever had in the Final Four in one conference. 1985, the Big East. Villanova won the national championship. Georgetown was runner-up. St. John's lost to Georgetown.
Was the Chris Mullen, Patrick Ewing crew?
Yeah.
That was. That makes
All right,
sense.
guys.
The Big East was a beast.
Amy.
All right, so now we're going to welcome on CBS sports radio analyst Amy Dash. Amy, thank you. I just reached out to her recently if she could do this. I was reading a lot of your stuff about the Deshaun Watson situation, and you know, us novices, we don't want to speculate in any way about what's going on. But as of right now, 19 suits have been filed, all civilly, right? There hasn't been any communication from the police around criminal cases being investigated. So as you watch this play out, and as you hear that there's some discussion around settlements and things like that, is or will there be, you know, a criminal investigation if this continues, or is this simply a suit brought together by a civil lawyer trying to, you know, get as much money as he can for his clients?
Right now, it's the latter. It's a suit brought by a civil attorney, many suits, and, you know, designed to pressure him to settle and get money for his clients. That's what I believe that it is. That's not to say that there's no validity to the claims. They might absolutely be true, but to be piling on lawsuits like this and filing them one right after the other and be so out there in the media, definitely this is a strategy. In terms of a criminal investigation, I find it strange that a week ago he said, Tony Busby said he was going to be handing over all of these documents, affidavits to the police department. And we haven't heard anything from the Houston Police Department, even saying that they have gotten those documents, that they're commencing their criminal investigation. Whether or not they bring charges, that would be down the road, but it's been completely silent. So I think that's a little bit strange, given the sheer number of women that we're seeing come forward. One would think that the police department would say at least, okay, we're starting a criminal investigation, if in fact this attorney is cooperating with them.
If that's the case, and ultimately he passes along these affidavits, the Houston Police Department has to investigate, right? And then it becomes a criminal decision placed in front of what the state of Texas is an indictment grand jury state, I believe, and it would go in front of a grand jury, and they would then decide on whether or not to indict Deshaun Watson on how many cases they choose to do, right?
Exactly right. So, I mean, the fact that there's been zero communication from the police department or from the prosecutor's office a week after, like I said, he said he was handing all of this information over is strange. The fact that he's the only attorney that's bringing this is strange. The fact that planted in these lawsuits, you know, are these little tidbits that will basically inflame a media circus, as you saw the latest one today, that he's allegedly trying to settle Deshaun Watson, that he was trying to delete his Instagram messages, whether that's true or not. And then the media sort of picks up on it, and all of a sudden the whole thing is revived. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, now there's 19. And you know, the latest one has this juicy tidbit. It's really, to me, it seems strategic. Like I said, that doesn't discount that some of this may be true. All of it may be true. But certainly there is a strategy here by this attorney to get whatever it is. Now, I'm a little bit confused because he says that he's not out for the money, and I'm hearing rumors that, you know, some of the women might just go the criminal route and cooperate with investigators and drop their civil suits, which I don't think is likely, because even if they got a criminal conviction, they still might want to get monetary damages. But the lawyer keeps saying this isn't about the money, but we're hearing nothing on the criminal side, and he's just filing suit after suit after suit. So to me, it seems like it's about the money. I mean, that's just my opinion. If
you're somebody, you come from it from the legal side of things, so it can kind of be a Switzerland part of it, just analyzing what's coming in, what's going out. For all of us who are working in the kind of analyst side of things, from the sports aspect of things, I don't ever want to judge anybody until we have, the evidence and everything's placed in front of us and everything like that. 19 different women now coming forward. Is this the empowering thing that happens? And we saw it with the Me Too movement, where you felt like you couldn't talk about it because no one would believe you, but you have people who have had shared same experiences, and you're willing to come forward, and you feel like it kind of takes the power away from not being believed.
It could be, but it also may be that some of them are credible and some of them are not, or none of them are credible. I mean, I've seen stranger things, to be honest with you, covering these types of cases with high profile athletes. I've seen stranger things than all 19 people being liars. But I'm not saying they are. They could all be telling the truth, and this man could be a horrible sexual predator. It's just too early to tell, and I haven't seen any substantial evidence that would really sway me one way or the other. And so as everybody jumps on all these little tidbits coming out, oh, maybe he's deleting the messages, that means he's guilty, that I wouldn't read into that stuff, because this is a man who's under tremendous pressure, right? Every single day, more damning information is coming out about him, and everybody is covering it. And I doubt his attorney told him, hey, if in fact he did delete it, go delete those messages. An attorney would probably advise against doing that. However, doing so, and if he did delete these messages, it's not incriminating in and of itself, because sometimes people do impulsive things. As you see, the media is taking every little thing that was said and distorting it and using it against him. So he may have just been, doing that. Now, also, it's not a criminal thing. There's no criminal investigation. Are you supposed to destroy evidence in a case, civil or criminal? No. But in civil cases, it's very hard to prove that he did it intentionally. He could say someone else was on his account. He could say that his account was hacked. He could say that he never did it and there was a technical error. And then it's just really hardly ever enforced in the civil realm. In my experience, I've seen way worse, spoliation of evidence, and it's just like completely overlooked, or maybe you'll get some sort of a reprimand. In a criminal investigation, and you're trying to obstruct law enforcement's investigation, then it would be more serious, but we don't have a criminal investigation going on right now.
We're talking to Amy Dash from CBS Sports Radio, legal analyst, about the Deshaun Watson situation. Okay, so, we don't want to jump to conclusions. We're trying to let things play out. What does this look like in terms of a timeline now? These civil suits have been filed. When does something like that, when would that go, if it gets as far as going to court on those civil actions? How far down the line would that take? What are we looking at now? What are the next steps?
I mean, I wonder how many more suits are coming, because he was saying maybe 22, 23, 24. In terms of how long it's going to take to get, let's say, before a jury, if it even goes to a jury in the criminal or civil realm, I would say a very long time, months, potentially years. The process is really slow right now, especially with COVID. And from what we're hearing, whether it's true or not, either Deshaun Watson or his representatives, according to the court documents, have already reached out to some of these women, the plaintiffs are saying, and trying to settle the cases. And if it settles, then the timeline is it's over in terms of the civil stuff. It wouldn't impact the criminal stuff unless people decide they don't want to cooperate. Then it would be very hard to bring the criminal cases, which is why settling at this point before there's a criminal investigation is probably a good idea. And so maybe he's trying to do that, but it's really very open-ended. I mean, there could be a grand jury indictment today, tomorrow. A lot of these times, these are done secretly. So one could be going on and we wouldn't even know about it.
Well, I certainly didn't when I was indicted in the state of Texas. So I get your point.
Right. You're right. You're supposed to give the person who's accused an opportunity, if they know about it, to come into the grand jury and defend themselves. A lot of states have that opportunity. But as you know, that's hardly ever done. And then the person who's indicted doesn't even know about it. And sometimes the media will know before that person.
Yeah. We talked about the settlement side of these things. And to your point, like, if you are his attorney and you are thinking about preserving the one thing that Deshaun Watson does well, that makes him a lot of money, and that's play football, are you advising him to settle these things as quickly and quietly as possible. Therefore, you can get back to the work that you're doing, because that seemingly seems like the best route for him right now. But there's so much ambiguity around whether or not he is going to play football. Does the NFL then begin an investigation, no matter what? If it's a civil settlement, the NFL doesn't regard criminal or civil as any different. They'll investigate regardless.
Exactly. And that's why I think the most damning thing that's come out that I'm hearing in one of these lawsuits, if it's true, is that one of the victims apparently told a former or a present NFL player after something happened with Deshaun Watson what happened at around the time that it happened. That to me is really, really strong evidence, if in fact it exists, for the NFL investigation, as well for the civil. But people are really concerned, as you mentioned, with, oh, what's his NFL career going to be? And in terms of the NFL investigation, they are conducting it already, and they can look into this, whether there's criminal charges filed or not. He could be suspended, as we've seen in the past. The NFL basically, indicted Ezekiel Elliott themselves and came out and made a determination on whether he committed domestic violence. So in their policy, it says they can do that with sexual assault and rape as well, that they can decide whether it happened or not, absent all of the procedural safeguards. It specifically says rape in there.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's another NFL player who may have been told something, well, now you're talking about somebody who's inside the fold of the NFL, that the NFL will definitely want to speak to, probably have access to, and that may lend credibility to at least one of these women's claims, if in fact it's true. But in terms of settling, I think you settle the ones that are the most damaging. So like the allegations of forced oral sex, forced kissing, some of the allegations were like an indecent assault or an indecent exposure, which would be a misdemeanor and might be harder to prove. But anywhere where you have people who were told something, text messages to support it, really, really offensive allegations in terms of, either rape, though I haven't heard that yet, or forced oral sex, that's what you want to go and settle. Because, I mean, he makes a lot of money, but theoretically, more and more people could just keep coming. And then how many would he have to settle? I mean,
Right.
And how much would they want? So it may not be financially feasible.
And once you open that door and decide to start settling, there's no stopping it if you want to get to it.
You're a bank then. I mean, essentially.
Yeah, and
whether you're guilty or not, it's
this seems to me, from somebody who spent time with Deshaun. Of course, we never know who somebody is in their private time. I'm very understanding of that. For us to be patient, let everything play out, so we can. Thank you, Amy, for joining us in such short notice and educating us really about the legal system. Amy Dash, CBS Sports legal analyst. Thanks much. All right, have a great day.
You too.
So that was insightful. I said this on the Rich Eisen show the other day. I don't know if we'll ever see Deshaun Watson play football ever again. And I think that's hyperbolic, but when we look at it from 30,000 feet, where do we see him playing? I mean, to her point, we don't know anything, right? If this continues just to be a civil action and we don't see anything criminal coming forward, who knows? The NFL gets involved. But the furthest thing from the discussion right now, in terms of Deshaun Watson, guys, is whether or not he's going to be playing football.
I mean, I don't know. I agree. I mean, that's the ultimate question. But like Amy said, right? Like, it's pretty early in this process. Now, I have a question for you, Ryan. If this is not pursued beyond civil and he ends up settling, regardless of if everything comes out as true or not, just he ends up settling, what's the leash on Deshaun Watson in the NFL after, assuming they settle?
Well, if he settles, the NFL is going to suspend him. So it's going to be.
And that's the bare minimum. No matter what, he's at least looking at a suspension.
Right. Now, if you recall correctly, Kobe Bryant and his accuser settled. and there was some deference to Kobe Bryant, but we've seen how that has played out, right? If you're good enough and you try to make amends and do the next right thing, there is a way back.
But
Now,
the era surrounding this conversation is very different now than it was in 2006 when Kobe was going through it.
yes, much different.
Mhm.
So wouldn't that, like, the climb back from settling through something like this, especially with social media, with the Me Too
Would be
movement,
terribly difficult, I believe.
it's going to be next to impossible.
And we've talked about this with the Myers-Leonard situation around consequences to your actions. You may not ever get to do what you are privileged to be able to do. Okay? You may never get to do that again because the consequences exist in a way that don't allow it for, like Art Briles for me, right? I don't believe he should ever be able to coach kids again, and that's okay. You can go do other things. I understand that. Same with me. When I talked about when I coached young men and I took advantage of them, I should not be trusted ever again. And those are the consequences that exist. Doesn't mean I can't go try to be a better person, but the consequences to these actions, if true, may never let Deshaun Watson play professional football again.
Ryan, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And that's okay. That's okay. Doesn't mean he can't become a good person, make amends, change behavior, and be a productive member of society. None of that is going to stop him from doing that. It may mean he never gets to play professional football again. And as disappointing that is for him and for his fans and things like that, that's okay. There are consequences. David Morey, this is the one you're talking about here, Ryan. If you had a Pro Bowl level talent in your early NFL career, do you think you would have given another chance after your issues? Well, my issues weren't the criminal or weren't the substance abuse stuff yet. All that stuff came after my career. My problem was, I wasn't talented enough because I didn't work hard enough when presented with adversity at the time. And, mine were mental health issues. So if I were to have addressed them during the problems, if I would have seen a psychiatrist or told people I was going through these things, yeah, I believe I would have given it a second chance. But if I would have been, sexually assaulting somebody or stealing pills from teammates or homes or things like that, I don't believe I should have been afforded another chance. This is not a second chance league. It never has been. It has been for some of us who have been drafted really high. Those second chances tend to come a little more. But if the leash is short, and if you are, if you are thought to have committed some of these acts that he's being accused of, there's consequences to those actions. There are. And I understand if he were never to play football again, I would understand that. Like I said, again, doesn't mean he can't move forward and do amazing things with his life. It just may not be on the football field. And that is okay.
Where do the guys, Ryan, who are on the football field currently, Ben Roethlisberger, Kareem Hunt, Ray Rice was back after a brief suspension in his situation.
Tyreek Hill.
Ray Rice never got a chance.
He didn't come back.
I thought he was reinstated, and then they took away his reinstatement.
I don't know.
Okay,
he never played another down. So
okay, so regardless, okay, so let's extract him. But the examples are still prevalent in this conversation, right? There are still current players who have been through, obviously not 19 to 20 something allegations, but there are guys on the field who have committed egregious physical actions towards women.
In the moment, it always seems like it's the end of the world. And that's why I stated it with hyperbole as Deshaun Watson never playing again. You know, I feel the same way. When I walked out of prison or when I was arrested, I thought it was over. I thought there's no way ever anybody could look at me differently than this piece of shit that's sitting in this cell. Okay? So in the moment, we always kind of feel that way. Rehabilitation is always available and always there. And we are a country of second, third, fourth chances. We are. That's the case. You know, we'll see what it looks like a year from now after we know more and everything like that. There's just the cancel culture that exists right now and continues could be a problem in this. And I don't ever want to gloss over the seriousness of the crimes and the victims that have come forward to accuse him of that. If true, like I've told you guys before, is I'd always want to fault on the side of believing the victim and being wrong. That's just where I fall on this side of things. So it is a very convoluted, serious, unknown situation we're in terms of results. What we do know is that this has put a large question mark around Deshaun Watson and whether or not a bright star for the NFL in terms of the quarterback position for the foreseeable future is even going to be available to play said sport anytime soon. So this is a very non sequitur, but we're going to pay some bills. Athletic Brewing, everybody.
It'll help you stay out of trouble.
It will help you stay out of trouble, people. It will. I can attest to that. All right. Athletic Brewing, non-alcoholic brewery. Brew without compromise. Shop now at athleticbrewing.com. Get 10% off your first delivery of 2 6-packs. Today we're cracking open their non-alcoholic IPA, Run Wild. Love cracking these open during the show. I'm allergic to alcohol. Therefore, I break out in handcuffs if I have it. So I go the non-alcoholic route. I get all the same great taste, enjoyment without any of the consequences that exist. This is about right choices. Doesn't mean it's for everybody. But if you like the taste of beer and not the consequences that come with it sometimes, athleticbrewing.com is your go-to, all right? Enjoy.
Ryan, I want to point out while we have this break in the action that our frat boy extraordinaire, Charlie Moss, has yet to say a word on this show.
Oh my God. I've just been waiting to chime in. I take my time when
we've had a lot of interaction from our fans today. I think probably Charlie's been reading them up, saying where are we going?
You should have seen Friday, Ryan. It was through the roof. Friday.
Well, I love that.
Oh, I had to mute Charlie on Friday because he was talking too much.
Oh my God, no! On Friday, we were talking about Sky's beard for about 10 or 15 minutes. I swear.
Well, that's not the show we want to do. So.
I wasn't even in
Friday than we have in any single day. So maybe Sky's beard is the sell.
It was Friday fun.
If that's the case, listeners, if you want a show about Sky's beard, there's a channel for that. All right, we'll find one. We'll start a new one called Sky's Beard. All right.
Maybe, do like an only beard
on the RDL show on the RDL on the
network.
What is it? The podcast network. There you go.
On the RDL podcast network, Sky Guasco's.
You got it. Beard. I'm in.
All right. So Friday we talked about this a little bit, right? As I was coming to you guys from the Rich Eisen studios, the huge trades that happened during the show or right before the show. You know, the big moves that San Francisco made to get to number 3. Now, this has been the big conversation over the weekend is why would they do that, right? And they had to have fallen in love with somebody at the quarterback position because they're not moving up 9 spots, giving up all they did to draft a linebacker. Okay, that doesn't happen. They moved up to get a quarterback. Now, who did they fall in love with? Did they fall in love with Mac Jones, who I believe they did? Trey Lance after that workout? or Justin Fields, or did the local kid impress them so much there in Palo Alto that Davis Mills, a guy that people weren't looking at until the second or third round, all of a sudden become something? I can't imagine that's the case. So the only logical one that's like standing up in front of me right now is Mac Jones. Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch jumped on a plane. They're flying down to Alabama to run a private workout for Mac Jones here. So, I mean, everything. I don't know if it's a big smoke screen, if they're trying to establish something, but this seems like what they did to Chicago a few years back, where they got Chicago to move up to 2 to take Mitchell Trubisky, and now John Lynch is moving way the hell up to get a guy at 3, because you've got to assume that both Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are going to be off the board. It's like when you're playing blackjack and you see a face card on top of the dealer's hand. You have to assume that underneath is another face card, and the dealer's holding 20. So you got to hit, right? So you're assuming that both 1 and 2 are quarterbacks going to Jacksonville and New York. That means they are down to Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields. So which one's the one? Is Mac Jones a guy that no one anticipated being in the top 5 before this all started? Is this the big move that the San Francisco 49ers did to get to? Or was this an incredible reach because they fell in love with a guy that a lot of people didn't have the same analysis on?
I want to take a look right here to the updated 12 picks of the NFL draft. Ryan, is there any chance that, if the 49ers stayed at 12, could they have gotten Mac Jones anyway? I mean, the Jaguars, the Jets, the Falcons, even maybe with behind Matt Ryan, possibly, the Panthers and the Broncos. So that's maybe 4 or 5 expected to take a quarterback in this draft.
Put that back up for me, would you? Put that back up for me. Okay, so there's never been 4 quarterbacks drafted to start an NFL draft. Very possible this year. Now the Bengals are sitting in a really unique situation because they most likely are going to get Penei Sewell. My money is what do they do with their pick? Are they worried that the Dolphins would take him and bolster their offensive line for Tua, or would they take a playmaker like Devontae Smith or Jamar Chase? The Lions probably want a quarterback if Goff doesn't work out. I don't know. Panthers do for sure. Watch for the Panthers at 8 to do something with the Bengals or possibly the Dolphins to jump up where they could get a quarterback. That may be some more movement there. The Eagles falling back to 12 was a little interesting. They're most likely still going to be able to get a pretty darn good wide receiver, and they've been able to bolster their draft capital. I still would have liked them to stay at 6 and make sure they got one of the top ones in Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith, because both those guys are going to be gone by the time the Eagles pick at 12. We'll see how that plays out. But it's been an interesting few days. The Falcons, they also know what the number 2 pick looks like, right? Sam Darnold's name's been thrown out and about in terms of part of this year's draft class and where he ranks. Some people, Daniel Jeremiah, for one of them, has placed him as, I think, the 3rd quarterback right now. So you're talking about, so that would be the 3rd guy. So if you can get him with experience, there could be some movement there. I'm really interested to see what the Jets are going to do now. I don't believe that they're going to pass up a chance to get a new quarterback on a rookie contract to start with a new head coach, give the fan base a bit of a rebirth. Therefore, you put the 49ers and the Falcons in precarious positions on what they're going to do at the quarterback position. Now, if the 49ers or if the Falcons truly believe the 49ers taking Mac Jones, watch the Falcons at 4 take Trey Lance. That's where I think that goes. And there you go. Those are your top 4 picks. And this will be the year where a lot of people didn't necessarily think it's a really strong draft class in terms of the quarterback position. Now going for the first time ever is the top 4 picks.
So could the Niners potentially look, so say the Jets at 2 go with the quarterback, Sam Darnold then becomes available, we can say. Do you think the Niners could potentially look at Sam Darnold and then get out of that 3rd pick again?
Well, I don't see why they would do that after giving as much as they gave away. It would be kind of like, you go and placing a bet in the Super Bowl for the Bucks and the Chiefs, and you place the same amount of money on both teams where you would break even. It would just be essentially they were trying to break even. So I think they've made their move. they've spoken loud and clear. They said they wanted to keep Jimmy. I think they're trying to do what the Chiefs did with Alex Smith. The Chiefs didn't move up to 3 and give up that much. They moved up to 10. They took a guy that a lot of people didn't really know too much about, in Patrick Mahomes, a guy that hadn't, won more than 5 or 6 games there in his tenure, and then they sat him for a year. If Mac Jones came to San Francisco, most fans didn't clamor for Patrick Mahomes to start that year, especially when Alex Smith and the Chiefs went to Foxborough and beat Tom Brady and the Patriots on the Monday Night Football game to start the season.
But top three quarterback though seems like if you're moving up to 3, especially making the move to 2-3, you're getting someone to start maybe right away. I mean, Herbert and Tua were drafted at 5 and 6 last year, and they were looking to be play right away. Now Tyrod Taylor goes down and Fitzpatrick, whatever, but fans at least expected them to go in early. Do you think they would really draft somebody to sit behind Jimmy at moving up to 3, as aggressive as they would be? And second question, how much inside conversation do you think there might actually be with Robert Saleh, of course, formerly of the 49ers, and those guys having a conversation back and forth? Do you think that would be possible, where maybe the Jets have played their hand to the Niners, like, we're going to do this because we know the Jags are doing this, and opening the door? I mean, just curious on that.
I think that no way that's going on now. I think there's a Chinese wall that goes up immediately between Robert Saleh and those coaches, unless he thinks it can benefit him.
Okay.
If he thinks it can benefit him, then maybe yes. But, he's not divulging anything that's going to give the 49ers, because, he's in competition with them now, and he will be for the foreseeable future. This isn't about taking that on or anything like that. So I like Mac Jones. I really do. I think he is I have him ahead of both Justin Fields and Trey Lance, so that makes sense to me. A lot of people don't. A lot of people believe that he seemingly is a guy that played in a very fortuitous offense, most talent in college football, which is true. He wasn't pressured much. What happens when adversity hits? He doesn't move at all, in a league where a lot of people have to move. But guess what? 7 Super Bowls and 1 last year, the quarterback that doesn't move much won another one, right? Matt Ryan doesn't move much, and Kyle Shanahan's offense was unbelievable. Led the league, was the MVP, got him to a Super Bowl. And if Kyle Shanahan would have just done something a little differently, like just tell him to take a knee for 3 straight plays and kick a field goal, they would be Super Bowl champions. Okay? So, I think Mac Jones is a good fit there. Ironically enough, after the quarterbacks that went through, and Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa and now Mac Jones, how funny is it that Mac Jones may ultimately be the best of the 3 that played at Alabama? And he waited. He sat there, and there was conversation. He had to beat out Bryce Young this season, a 5-star quarterback, to get the job, and he was great. He was really great. So, we'll reference this just really quick. I don't want to gloss over it. It's something that could be big, and we'll get more into it on Wednesday. The NFLPA and the NFL deciding on whether or not 17-game schedule is going to come into play for the NFL. It's weird to think, from a guy that's known 16 games my whole life, and when I played in, to now see it go to 17. It's all about the money. It's all about the revenue that the owners can make. If they had their druthers, they'd have 4 preseason games and 17 regular season games. That's how they would have it, because they're only paying players $1,000 a week in the preseason, yet they're still getting whatever a full gate is normally during a preseason. That makes it worthwhile to them. But adding a 17th game, it only benefits ownership and the health and safety of the player, which is what we talk about all the time. I don't think is really being considered. So we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. But I do want to get to some of these questions here.
I have some highlights. Wait, I have some highlights from the chat. So there's a lot's been going on.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we saved a lot of this for the end, but luckily the chat remains. So first of all, I want to point out this guy JP. JP is the boy. He hates Russell Wilson apparently because he wants to take a sip of Athletic Brew every time JP brings up Russell Wilson for insert bad trade here. He mentioned something earlier. Let's see if I can find. Okay. I don't even think that the question itself is a great question, but the idea of a sleeper, and I want to get your perspective on this, Ryan. He says, is Trey Lance or Justin Fields a sleeper? Neither of them are sleepers because they're top quarterbacks in the draft, right? But how far down the list do you have to go before you get to a sleeper? But right, because if you pick a top 5 quarterback, that's an expected star for the team, a guy who will sit out for a year. But a sleeper is somebody who erupts onto the scene. How far down that list do you go before you start recognizing players as sleepers?
I'd probably think of, for me, a sleeper. Like some people looked at Justin Herbert as a sleeper last year a little bit. He was picked 5th overall, right?
No, he's not
what we were expected. Now, hey, we were surprised at how quickly he adapted and how great he was when he played, but he wasn't a sleeper. I continue to say it's Davis Mills for me, the quarterback out of Stanford. He's a guy that could go. Last year, a sleeper for me was Jacob Eason out of Washington. If he got the reins. Clearly, he didn't do enough last year as the scout team quarterback. Didn't get preseason games to showcase what he could do, and they brought in Carson Wentz. So we'll see where that goes from there. I think Davis Mills is the sleeper in this year's draft, and any team that gets a chance to draft him could really catch a good one there. That's a sleeper for me.
We sort of briefly talked on what happened to Sam Darnold. But a more in-depth perspective here, Ryan. We know they're picking a quarterback. I mean, what's the bet? If you're Sam Darnold, what are you hoping to happen to you?
Well, I'm hoping to be traded to if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm hoping no one trades for me because they know that the Jets are desperate and they have to do it, and therefore he'll be released and therefore can sign with whoever he wants. That's the best case scenario for Sam Darnold, in my opinion. For his best success. Now, if he gets sent to a place where he's going to be kind of following the footsteps of Marcus Mariota in terms of being a backup, kind of shelved there, and we don't hear much from him again, and he could be a career backup. That's every bit of possibility happening. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Anything quickly we can get to before we get out of here?
I asked in the chat. Because I figured we might as well get the conversation going. Everyone give us one adjective to describe Sky's beard. So we got some stuff. Is it primordial?
Primordial.
David, your UK words don't work over here, man. None of us can pronounce that. We got bulky. I agree. We got ZZ Top-esque.
Oh, not even. I appreciate it, but I'm about 35 years away from ZZ Top.
I like that one though.
Ferocious.
I like that though. Majestic,
ferocious, I'll take.
We got anti-frat because Charlie's our resident frat boy. So I guess.
Oh my god.
Yep. Oh, we had a typo. Primordial. Okay, we're good.
Primordial.
We got majestic.
I like majestic. Like this show, majestic, glorious, demonstrative.
Right, take us out of here.
Informative. It's been fun. Come back on Wednesday. We'll talk a little bit more. Appreciate you guys being with us. You wouldn't believe this amount of subscribers we went up. I think we're halfway to our goal of 1,000. We're getting there. Please tell your friends. Come join us an hour a day on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Pacific for an hour. We'll have a blast. All you guys that keep being a part of it and interacting with the show, thanks so much. It's meaningful to all of us. It really is. We'll see you on Wednesday. You're listening to the Ryan D. Leaf Show. I'm Ryan Leaf.